Good morning, everyone. This morning's session is all going to be about grants for junior or new researchers, because not all researchers are junior. There are some older junior researchers. We're going to start out with the guest speaker, Srini Tridandapani, and then I'm going to follow after he finishes because he has to get to Grady. So, Srini?
Thank you.
Don't kill it, just minimize it.
Okay, good. So thank you for giving me this chance to talk about this. It's always nice to talk about your own experience. So most of this will be my own experiences and my own roles. There's a lot of general rules, but I'm going to focus on rules that I think are useful for the career development grants like the KL2, the K23, and the RSNA and rent and rate types of grants and so on. So I came up with these 10 rules. So first rule, what's the most effective way to fail at a grant? We can run through this real fast, but I'm going to focus on the K23, but I want to talk about this really briefly. What's the most effective way to fail at a grant? Naja?
Not write it up effectively.
That's exactly right. Well, not write it up. It's the most effective way is not submitting it. If you don't submit it, you're not going to get the grant, right? It's also the dog ate my grant rule. You have to submit first in order to be considered. Second rule is follow the money. What does that mean? It means you have to write a grant that actually addresses what the committee is looking for. So I can't write a clinical grant to the NSF. They don't care. I can't write a physics grant, or a basic science physics grant to the NIH. Well, most of the time you can't quite do that. Saying I'm going to redo Maxwell's equations. The NIH won't care. So related to that, when I say follow the money, you got to find the grants that really apply to what you're trying to do. So NIH and NSF, fine, those are the gold standard, but it turns out that there are lots of other grants that are relatively, compared to the NIH and NSF, easier to get. The RSNA has a scholarship grant. It's $50,000 for 2 years. It's about $70,000 a year for 2 years, and they'll give it. It requires 50% commitment of time. Rent and Raise scholarship is a similar thing. It's about $150K, I think, for 2 years. Same commitment. Giraffe has the same sort of a thing. ASNR has the same thing. And I'll tell you this: they're relatively easy. I was on that RSNF panel last year. They had 18 grants submitted. For some reason, the number of grants that are being submitted there has gone down. They had 18 grants submitted. And we asked them, well, how many are you going to submit? And they wouldn't tell us, well, we don't really know because we don't know how much funding, but last year we accepted 12. Now, that's a pretty good hit ratio, getting to 60% if that is a place where we should be trying. Another thing I put down is the AHA grants. A lot of people think the Heart Association, oh, that's just for the cardiologist. Not true. The Heart Association is a general association, it deals with cardiovascular diseases. It's not run by cardiologists. In fact, I think a couple of years ago, the president of the AHA was a neurologist. So, if you're doing some kind of a vascular thing, if you're doing CT, coronary angiography, or, if you're doing brain perfusion imaging, you can absolutely go to the American Heart Association. I've reviewed for them. They had a chemist who was developing batteries, and he got the grant because he was developing battery for a pacer device. So, you can absolutely be almost anything and then figure out a way of how it advances the AHA mission. So you should look into that too. Rule number 8 is the golden rule. What is the golden rule? It's not the kindergarten, do unto others thing. The golden rule is he who has money has the gold, right? So before you write the grant, you want to talk to the people who run the programs. So here, if you're applying for the KL2, which is the ACTC 2-year, the baby K grant is what it's called, and we'll talk a little more about that. There are a couple of people you have to go and talk to. One of them is Blumberg. He runs the program. And then the educational program there is run by Tom Ziegler. So before I wrote the grant, I went and talked to both of them. And they said, send me your CV. They looked at my CV. I was sitting in front of them. They were going through the CV. Oh, Georgia Tech, you have a joint appointment there. Both their eyes lit up. So you have to listen very carefully to what they say for the 20 minutes, take notes, and then go back and say, what was it that really excited them? So what excited them was Georgia Tech, and the reason was they have a grant which was joint between Emory, Georgia Tech, and Morehouse, and not a single person from Georgia Tech had ever applied for a KL2. It had become an Emory sort of a thing, and it's hard for them to show NIH that, hey, we're really getting Georgia Tech involvement. And so as soon as they saw that, their eyes lit up, and I could see that that's what was really exciting. So here's what I did. In my cover letter, I made sure with the very first line, it started with, hey, I have a joint appointment with Georgia Tech. And down there I said, oh, I'm going to take some courses at Georgia Tech as part of my training plan, okay? So in case they didn't read the cover letter, in case they missed it, I wrote this first paragraph, overview of the research and training plan. Right at the end I said, Emory and Georgia Tech. Right? In case they missed that there, in my specific aims, way at the end, after the two aims, I put down, hey, Georgia Tech and Emory, I'm going to be doing this. In case they missed it there, at the end of my first aim, I said, hey, I'm going to take two courses at Georgia Tech which are related to everything that we're doing in aim 1. In case they missed it there, I went to aim 2 and I said, hey, these are the courses I'm going to take. This is related to what I'm going to do for specific aim 2. If they still missed it, in the training plan, I went out and I pushed this again. I relentlessly hit them with Georgia Tech because I knew this was my key of getting it, right? And made sure I threw that in there, in the course list. And then when it came to the mentoring team, I made sure that there were a couple of good mentors from there who would write letters. I put this in there. And sort of a little segue, what I want to say is when you're writing the career development grants, a KL2 or K23, I think what the reviewers are looking for is not that you have a plan just for the 2 years or the 5 years of the grant. They want to see the plan. What do you want to do with your career? Show them the plan that you are R01 material. You are going to get the R01. So I actually had a 4-year plan. Yeah, the next 2 years is a little, it's a lighter font and it's in gray, and the dark stuff is the stuff that I'm going to focus on. But what I want to stress to the committee is I'm going to take this grant somewhere else. I'm going to use this money that you give me. I'm going to parlay it into something bigger. So it'll make you guys look good for having funded me, right? And so the key is, I think you have to think about what the program officers want. So for Blumberg and Ziegler, they want to get a renewal from the NIH, and they have to show, hey, we've really done great stuff with Georgia Tech. We've really trained the Georgia Tech people. And so I pushed that whole Georgia Tech angle. All I had was an adjunct appointment. They weren't paying my salary. I didn't have an office. Nothing. I just knew a couple of people. I would meet them, and I pushed that angle. All right. Rule number 7 is the template rule. This is very simple. If you don't have a template, you're not going to win. You start with a good template. You start with somebody's grant, and you fill things in. So when I wrote my first Rentgen Ray Scholar grant, I asked prior Rentgen Ray scholars, hey, can you give me a grant? Not one of them said no. So I had 3 templates I could work with. And you should not be afraid to give, and here's the rule. This is the corollary to the rule is if somebody gives you your grant, you owe the world your grant. So somebody gives you their grant, you owe the world your grant after you're successful with it. I think this is just the way the world works, that after you're successful, somebody else comes and asks you, you have to give it to them. You should not be afraid that they're going to steal your ideas, because nobody can replicate those ideas. They can take the template and they say, okay, I'm going to do this, but they're going to be doing something different. If you have a background in physics and medicine and physics, they're going to have a background in chemistry and something else. So they can't really steal your ideas. You've been working on it for years and years. There's no way they're going to swoop in and use it. You should not be afraid of that, particularly for a career development grant. It's not like, a lot of it is not on the research. It's only a third of it on the research. The other third is on your mentorship and your committee, and the other third is actually on your teaching and training plan. And they're all going to be different. You're going to be taking certain types of courses. They're going to be taking different courses. They're in a different institution. They don't have the same resources you have. So, you should give them your template, and you should use the template. There really is no other way that I know of writing grant. You need a solid template. Another way of getting a good template is actually volunteering to review for different associations. And you may think, oh, they're not going to give it to me unless I have a grant first. that's not entirely true. In fact, the best way to get the grant is to be on the committee, see what they are looking for, and then write the grant. This is what my wife did. At Georgia Tech, they want you to write a career development grant, the career grant at NSF. And she said, I'm not going to write it. And she sat on the panel for 2 years, and she knew exactly what they were looking for before she wrote it and got it in the first shot. So that's important. The crime partners rule. What does this mean? This means you have to surround yourself with really, really, really amazing, beautiful people. Okay? For the K23, there's a mentorship committee. And it's usually not one mentor. You need 5, 6, 7 people. You may have one person who's going to help you write the next R01. You may have one person who's going to help you set up your lab. You may have another mentor who's going to help you to hire graduate students and postdocs, and they're going to tell you how they did it. You may have a mentor who helps you navigate the promotion process within your institution. You may have a mentor who puts you on national committees. You may have a mentor who's going to teach you a specific technique, and you have to put all of that into the grant. You have to say this person is going to do exactly this. So it's nice to have your mentors. It's nice to have all of them be R01 grantees. So you go back and say, hey, I've got 10 mentors and they all have R01 grants, so I'm going to win. But you have to give a good reason for why that person is on that grant. Their strengths, what is your weakness or what is your requirement from them and how they're going to help you. It has to be in that, in the grant. The other thing that I have to tell you, one of the biggest crime partners you're going to have is your chair, and there's now a committee which vets your K23 to make sure that this is something that can be submitted. And I'm going to tell you a secret that maybe Caroline doesn't want to hear it, maybe Elizabeth doesn't want to hear it. Here's what happens. I think I might have screwed things up for you guys, but here's how it works. Most chairs, when they start, they really want to support Ks. And I will tell you this, I'm not making this up. There was a former chair of a large institution. When he started, he said, I wanted to support these Ks, and he brought in 2 people who wrote Ks, right? He said it in an open forum at AUR, so I can tell you his name, all right? He happens to currently be the CEO of this institution. So John Lewin said, in an open AUR meeting, I funded 2 people to go out and get K23s. 5 years he funded them. At the end of the 5 years, one of them went to private practice and the other one went to UCSF. So he says, I will not fund K23s anymore, right? So let's say your salary is $300,000. The K23 requires you commit 75% of your time. And NIH will, depending on which institute you go to, if you go to NIBAB, they'll give you 105. If you go to the NHLBI, I think they give you 75, right? So they're going to give you $75,000 and expect 75% of your time. Now let's say your salary was, I don't know, 250, 300. So the chair has to put in the rest of that money. So I can't do the math off the top of my head, but 75%. So they're really funding you at $100,000. So, it's close to like 150 or something that the chair has to pitch in. And I think, when chairs start, they really want it, and then it takes them a couple of years to realize, oh, this is a lot of money. Where am I going to come up with this money? So I get the feeling here, Karen still likes K grants. Her own career was built on a K. That's what she wrote in the letter that on my K grant. So this is important to her. But I think they want to make sure that this is something that can get parlayed into an R01. This has to show R01 potential, R01 promise. I think that's the key. So they're all crime partners here. Dr. Meltzer is a crime partner. Dr. Krupinski is a crime partner. You really have to get them on your side and help them, let them understand what you're trying to do, and then ask them for help and say, how do I get to where I want to be? Okay, so you have all these crime partners. but you really are the boss. Okay, you have lots of mentors who want to help you, but they can't really help you unless you ask them the right questions. Unless you go to them and say, this is what I want help with. If you don't come up with the right question, they can't really help you. And you are the boss. You figure out what you want from each of the mentors and you put the mentorship team together. Now, I don't know. I think a lot of cases will say we're going to meet 3 times a year or 4 times a year with the mentorship team. I don't know how often this happens. I think you'll meet with one mentor. I think this is a big plan. You put it down. I think you like to do these things. It doesn't happen very easily. Especially people on a clinical world like here. One day I'm at Grady, one day at Midtown, one day at St. Joe's. It's very hard to get all these people together, right? So you are really running the show. You have to meet each person. You have to get this done. So this leads very naturally to the next rule, which is the ghost authorship rule. All right. So this may be, some people may think, hey, this is unethical, but it's not. I'll tell you what I mean by this. You are going to write every one of those letters from your mentors. All right. Again, there are some exceptions to the rule. I recently wrote a grant, and Elizabeth was one of the investigators on it, and I said, hey, can you write this letter? I knew she would do it. I could just sense that she would do it. But for everybody else, I wrote the letter because most of them they don't have the time to read your grant. They will help you, but they can only read 1 or 2 paragraphs, and it's very hard to make them read a 50-page grant or a 15-page grant or even a 6-page grant when they have so many other things going on. So here's what I would suggest. Remember when I said in the crime partners you have all these mentors, and in your grant you have all these sections, the mentors' descriptions and what they're going to help you with. You're going to write the letter saying that's exactly what you're going to help this candidate with, right? And you say, well, that's being presumptive of me. Can I just go and tell Dr. Meltzer, hey, here's the letter, sign it? Yeah, I was a little hesitant, but here's what I did, and I do this to everybody. I usually say, would you be willing to write a letter on my behalf? This is the grant that I would like to submit. I know you're busy, so if it would be helpful, I would be happy to write a draft for your wordsmithing pleasure. So they still have the authority to change what they want. They're going to sign it at the end, so you're still giving them the opportunity to disagree with anything you put down there. But I can tell you by and large, most people will actually embellish it more. You put down a few things and they'll say, oh yeah, I think he should actually add this too. I think Nacha, I've seen her do this. I'm going to add a little more. Nobody has ever come back and said, hey, you're overselling yourself. Nobody has ever said that, because most of us tend to undersell because we don't know how they'll approach it. And so this is a very important rule, the ghost authorship rule. So I'm going to get off PowerPoint for just a second, and I'm going to run through my K23 to show you how I did that. What did I do now? I hit escape. That was not a good thing to do, huh?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay.
So then just minimize.
I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to bring up my K23. And by the way, going back to that other rule about the template rule, any of you is interested in writing a K23 or a Rankin Ray scholarship, I'm happy to share that with you. The usual thing is that, yes, this is the way the whole world works. I give you something, you're supposed to take me out and buy me a nice dinner, right? And so you take the grant. And I think the corollary to that rule is that, yes, you borrow the template, but it's not yours. If somebody else asks you, you can't give my grant out to somebody else. They have to ask me so that they buy me dinner again. So that's how this works. So we'll just fly through this. This is all the, this looks like any other grant. There's a summary and an abstract, but in part of that abstract is also, there is a training plan. The first 30 lines are the research, and then you get some part for the training portion, but it's still a page like your R01 or an R23 grant, or an R21 grant. Project narrative looks just like the R01. then your facilities, all these things are the same. When it comes to the main, and here's the thing, your BioSketch, if you have a Georgia Tech person that you want on your K23, you're going to have to write their NIH BioSketch. They don't do it. They don't know how to do it. They know how to do an NSF BioSketch. They don't know how to do an NIH BioSketch. You're going to have to do that work. So this is, let's see, this was Oliver Brand. He's an engineer at Georgia Tech. I wrote this BioSketch. I took his NSF BioSketch and a CV, and I had to figure out which papers tie in with my grant, I basically wrote his personal statement too, and he had a chance to edit it. And so that's that. Let's go to the main part of the grant itself. The grant at that time when I did it was 12 pages, 6 pages of research and 6 pages of training. So here we go. I think it actually started with the career goals and objectives. You get to write 6 pages on that. So here's this mentorship and advisory team. So every one of these people, I wrote a paragraph. And I said what they're going to do. And that's my training plan. And right after that, you put down all of these letters from each of these people. So here is, actually, I'll take this back. This was a letter from Tracy Faber. Some of you may know her. She wrote most of this letter herself, and she put down her trainees. And then this is a letter from somebody else. Who signed this at the bottom? Let's see. Yeah, this was from Arthur Stillman. I wrote this grant. I wrote this letter, and he edited it. This is a different font I used to make it look like it's from somebody else. It's a different font, and the salutation is different. It says to whom it may concern, and then I say I'm writing in support of so-and-so, right? And then completely different font. I used Times New Roman here. This is from Paolo Raggi, slightly different font size. And then he put down his trainees. And this is somebody else, Oliver Brand, completely different font. He says, it is my pleasure to support. Here's another one from Jim McClellan, also from Georgia Tech. This letter is being written in support. It's slightly different. Some people call me Srini, some people call me Dr. Tridandapani. All these sorts of, you play these games to make it look like they're coming from different people, but they are coming from you. And yes, they are coming from those people too, because you are choosing words for them that you think that they will agree with respect to your relationship with them, right? So this is key. I think writing these letters is actually almost half the grant, because like I said, a third of the grant is research, a third of the grant is your training plan, and the other third of the grant is your mentorship team, how much they will support you. So, you're going to write all these letters. And the rest of the grant actually looks the same. This part about the, institutional environment, this is just like what you have for an R01, for example. And that was the chair's letter. And this is the research part. This is 6 pages, looks just like what you would do for an R01. You don't want to have more than 2 aims for this, because you're going to be spending a lot of time on the training. But you want to show that the training, I'm going to take this course that specifically ties in with AIM 1, and I think I did something like that. Here's the training integration, I said. So under AIM 1, this is the training integration. These are the courses I will take related to AIM 1. I think I must have, that may have been AIM 2. But here's the other one, training integration for AIM 1. And this is training integration for AIM 2. I think I had an AIM 3, which was very exploratory thing. I said, yeah, I'm going to start doing it. I want to actually complete it, is what I said. And I think I had some training integration for that too. So let's head back to, so another thing that you will get, you can actually have 3 of your mentors or people from outside write write letters which won't go with the grant. They're going to send it directly to the NIH. Guess what? You're going to write those letters too. You're going to write it and give it to them, and they'll modify it and send it to you. So they can modify it significantly. You won't know what they did on